And share screen. Okay. So most of you got through the process of trying to figure out which of the questions were accurate. Let me minimize that now. So you've got 2 documents on Moodle now. I just posted them about an hour ago. I'm going to scroll back up to today's section. I think most of you were pretty accurate from what I was hearing just popping in and out of class. Okay, so I added a vocabulary matching activity answers. So the answers are in this document here. So check that. You can see how accurate you were. More importantly, make sure you look at this main vocabulary page, because I was only able to get enough questions on there that covers maybe 2/3 of the main vocabulary page. There's a lot more detail on here as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this document, which I think I already have open up here. And I have this listed in pretty much by category. So I'm going to maximize this page. A lot of the things I did not have on here was the motor behavior, because you don't see a whole lot of it. But tardive dyskinesia is one that everybody needs to know. It's stiff and jerky movements, face, body, that the individual can't control. It includes eye blinking, tongue rolling in the mouth, people rolling their tongue in their mouth like this is what it looks like, kind of looking like somebody cleaning their teeth with their tongue, but it's much more pronounced. And sometimes the person will have their mouth open when they're doing it. And then waving arms and fingers. And in our video, you'll see the first client holds his hand, sorry, my hands keep disappearing, holds his hands like this and his arms out to the side and holds his hands kind of like this. It's real distinctive. And then you'll see finger movement like this. And tardive dyskinesia is really the result of antipsychotic medication over the long term. Folks, once they start developing these symptoms, should then start taking another medication that's going to help control these symptoms. So it's really important, if you see it, to make sure that the prescribing physician knows that that person's experiencing those symptoms.
Val, is there a typical onset of that, or is it just different in every person?
It's different in every person. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And now one of my cats is crying to get out of the room, but I have to ignore him. I want to talk about thought disturbances evidenced by speech patterns. One is aphasia, which is the inability to comprehend and formulate language. Sometimes the person will sound like they're talking gibberish. The words don't make any sense. Sometimes they'll be saying real words, but not in any kind of logical order. Now, aphasia is a symptom of many, many things, and it's more often the symptom of a stroke. So if you go and see a client in the community and you don't have any history on the client, you're doing a first visit or doing an intake, or there's no family around, you should refer them to the ER and call 911, because it's much more likely they're experiencing a stroke than they have a long-term mental illness. Another is neologism. That's a newly created word whose meaning is unknown to others. And in our second film, you'll see the gentleman who has a serious case of aphasia. He engages in neologisms, and he has what's called word salad or schizophasia. Confused and often repetitious language. That's a symptom of a number of mental illnesses, but predominantly psychotic disorders. He will say, you'll see his speech pattern. He will say words that his next phrase will have some associated words or words that sound like the last words he said, and it just doesn't make any sense at all, and certainly doesn't answer the question. So these are thought disorders evidenced by speech patterns. So is circumstantiality. A person is unable to answer a question without giving excessive detail. And our first video client does engage in that. The difference between circumstantiality and tangentiality is that in circumstantiality, they finally get back to the topic, where in tangentiality, they never return to the topic. Okay, so thought disturbances evidenced by speech. Poverty of speech is also called alogia. That is a minimal verbal communication that lacks the additional unprompted content characteristic of normal speech. So this is a person who almost doesn't say anything, that is so caught up in their psychosis, they don't say anything. Poverty of content is a significant disturbance in thought of content, speech that lacks meaning, or where the speech quantity is far greater than necessary for the message conveyed. And the second gentleman we're going to look at today has significant poverty of content. It lacks meaning. The first gentleman does towards the end of the clip we'll look at. He says a bunch of phrases, but they don't have any meaning. The next one I want to go over is illusion. This is a false perception of a detectable sensory stimulus. So sometimes folks have the experience of seeing movement in the corner of their eye, and they'll misinterpret that movement and think maybe there's a person standing next to them. That's a very common experience. I experienced that. I see a movement and I look thinking I've seen my cat or I've seen a person. And when I turn to look, there's nothing there, and I know that there's nothing there. So my brain interpreted that sensory stimulus in a way that was not accurate. A delusion is something different. It's a false fixed belief or an incorrect inference or idea about reality that the person holds very firm despite what everybody else and despite evidence to the contrary. So this is kind of on a continuum. Hallucinations are on or off. They're either having a hallucination or they're not. But a delusion comes on a continuum that starts with an overvalued idea, an idea that we think is more important than the people around us, but it's still subject to reality testing, all the way over to delusions where people believe, have large systems of belief about something that's not accurate. Now, in the middle is a whole bunch of stuff that's not necessarily a delusion. Many conspiracy theories fall into this central pile here, and that's not necessarily a delusion. So you've got to be careful when folks start telling you ideas that they have, that you do enough questioning, that you try to find out does that person's context and people around them in their context believe that or no. You can also get this around religious ideas as well. Also, cultural ideas can seem like a delusion, but maybe aren't when you explore the person's culture. So now I need to get down to hallucinations. So a hallucination is a perception in the absence of any stimulus that has qualities of real perception. They're vivid, substantial, and perceived to be located in external objective reality. So they tend to be, in order of frequency, they tend to be auditory, visual, or tactile. People can have olfactory, smelling hallucinations, and they can have taste hallucinations, but those are very rare. You're mostly going to hear people having auditory hallucinations or visual hallucinations. Now, hallucinations can also be the result of ingesting poisons, substances, parts of dementia disorders, end-stage dementia disorders, end-stage psychiatric disorders, brain injuries. So this alone doesn't make a schizophrenia diagnosis, but it is one of the primary pieces of it. They have to have a number of other factors there as well. So I just wanted to roll through these fairly quickly, in part because of time, and ask if folks have any questions or observations about any of these symptoms. So Sherry, what's the question about smoke and almonds in the chat?
I know that smoke and almonds, the smell of smoke and almonds is not part of schizophrenia, but I don't remember what diagnosis that actually correlates to.
Okay.
I forget.
Sometimes people sense that they're smelling smoke, but there isn't any smoke around. Is that what you're talking about?
Right, right.
There are some other smells that are related to neurological problems, and I don't remember any of those.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to go to the video. I'm going to minimize this screen.
Wait. Okay, so you said the ones like that have like the smell problems, that's olfactory, you called it?
That's the name of the type of hallucination it is. Olfactory is the scientific name for the sense of smell.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see.
And that's on the, I think that's on the vocabulary page towards the end.
Am I back now? Oh gosh.
Yep, we're all here. We're all here. So I'm gonna go to the Moodle page, and I'm still recording this. And I want to watch about 5 minutes of the first video and 5 minutes of the second person on the video. This first gentleman is engaging in circumstantial speech. He has tardive dyskinesia, you can see it in his hands, and he has 3 major delusions. And right before the beginning of this video, the psychiatrist asked him if he had any special powers. And we're gonna watch about 5 minutes of his answer. I'm gonna set up my phone so I can time this. And let me get into the video. And I'm gonna maximize it.
Was treating around a large number of people at the time, which basically led to an overload, operating under covers with various overloads under covers. And I better describe the covers. I hope I'm anticipating the question you're going to ask me the covers were in a minute.
That'd be a good question to answer.
Okay, good. Now let me answer that and then get back to this if there's any need to get back to it, or if it's possible to get back to it after I've led you on this rather hopefully convoluted. No.
That's a prime example of circumstantial speech. He will finally get back around to it, but he adds a whole bunch of other unnecessary speech in between.
I know it's convoluted, but at every step of the way, there is a rationale in the things I do. So let's put it this way. If you wish to get back to it in a minute and recall where we were before I got off the business of covers again, please do so. Okay? Okay. I'll interrupt you to ask you to recall what I was talking about a few moments ago so I can make this digression, okay?
Okay.
Well,
watch his right hand. It's going to start moving like this, and that's one of the symptoms of tardive dyskinesia.
I basically have 3 of them, and some of them are beginning to get a little worn. One of them is not a super secret agent, as some people might want to call it, but one is a man who is basically on some kind of diplomatic mission as far as various governments of the world are concerned, and therefore has a need of immunity of such things, along with operating in that vein. A second is being a happily married man, which is not true since I remain quite the bachelor yet. That's always a good one to play because it puts certain stresses and strains on various parts of my anatomy. which under the circumstances is quite humorous, especially when I relate to the fact that at one juncture I'm going to be bobbing back and forth there because I need to bob back and forth if that camera angle isn't just connected to right to make my emphasis is absolutely clear. So you might stay right for that camera angle of the cameraman.
So he's got enough reality testing to know he's being recorded, but even that interaction is very circumstantial. And this is an actual client. This was developed in the early 90s before HIPAA rules ruled out developing training videos of actual clients.
The second was that you're a happily married man.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah, a happily married man who at this juncture had about 23 illegitimate children. Somewhere along the line to which I had none of the best of my knowledge, since technically speaking, I had never been in bed with a woman before. Although there have been times where I've been close. And a third cover would be just to finish this off, and then we get back to digression, hopefully. A third cover would be that of some kind of churchman with some authority. Now, under all these guises was the feeling that under any cost, I had to be covered as far as certain church beliefs that I have right now. Let's drop that one right there. Delve into that might really embarrass me as far as the credibility of any of this stuff is concerned. And I assure you, when I go undercover, I try to make it a credible one.
What's the purpose of these covers?
Well, it's probably a secure. It's probably a inverse of a defense mechanism. No, that's a chicken's way out. The real way out is that it's a serious form of theatrics, which are being played out to the hilt for some paradoxical intended purposes.
You know, we were talking about whether you had some kind of special ability. Did you really believe you were these people?
Oh, to a great degree. I was playing those roles very seriously, but let's put it this way. Never so seriously that I could not extricate myself from these roles one way or another. And never was any role adopted in any sense whatever, other than to perhaps now is the correct time to use defense mechanisms and that sort of thing, other than perhaps to recall them. I got ahead of myself when I interrupted myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you first came into the hospital, you thought you were in the role of a doctor as well, and you thought you were treating
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. So you get a sense that, well, what do you get a sense of when you see this gentleman?
Well, I think he's like very disorientated, and it's just like like, I don't know, he has these delusions and these hallucinations and stuff, and it's just hard to like keep up with all the topics he's talking about. Like first he was talking about how he was married, and then no, he's not married, and all of that jargon and stuff.
So, yeah, to be clear, what he's talking about now are delusions. They're not hallucinations.
Okay.
But yeah, when you start talking to a consumer and they're not making any sense, he's got some connection to reality, but he's even made rules about his delusions and the roles they are and being undercover and that kind of thing. So he has a pretty extensive set of delusions that have probably developed over quite some time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So if a person's hallucinating, that's when they like are like paranoid or something, like when they do this, or they just like jumping all over.
Hallucinations are specific. They're experiencing a sensory sensation that they think is external to them that nobody else sees. So it's hearing something that's not really there, seeing something that's not really there, feeling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Delusions are these false fixed belief that something is real when it's not. And you notice when the psychiatrist asks him specific questions, he really goes way off topic and wraps himself up in this delusional thinking or descriptions of these delusions.
Would this be, I mean, it kind of seems like he may have like, I know it's not called this anymore, but multiple personalities in a sense?
No.
Or no, just delusion? Okay.
Yeah, this isn't at all how somebody with, it's called a dissociative identity disorder now. This is not at all how somebody with dissociative identity disorder presents. This is very classic presentation of somebody with schizophrenia. I'm not going into DID right now because I don't want to confuse folks, but it looks very different.
Okay, can a person that's schizophrenic be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder too, or?
No, that's ruled out in the DSM.
Okay.
The correct answer is no. Yeah.
I felt really impressed by this doctor or clinician's ability to just like stay with it and say nothing. And like, I like wanted to start laughing, you know? I mean, obviously you're watching this video and it's old and like, you know, the situation is a little bit different, but I'm like, wow, she is just rolling with this. And, you know, maybe part of it is that she knows she's being filmed, but I was like, man, I got to work on that poker face.
Yeah, we all do need a poker face. I really admire this clinician. She's a psychiatrist who's retired now, but I really like her style because she lets the person go, but then asks only a few questions, but really important questions that help her figure out what is the sign and symptom, or what are the signs that I'm seeing here. Let's look for a few minutes at the second one. The second gentleman is very different. I think the guy's only like in his late 30s, but he looks like he's in his 60s. And people who have schizophrenia do age more, and it's not just from living rough outside or being homeless. There's some other phenomena with it specific to schizophrenia. This gentleman's speech makes almost no sense. You can hear him making sense on occasion, but he has aphasia, and he engages in word salad where the words don't make any sense. And he has neologisms. He's going to use a word called detoned, and she's going to ask him, what does that word mean? And he's not going to be able to answer it. And there is no word called detoned. So you also have to be careful about people for whom English is not a first language, or you're not speaking their first language when you interview them, as well as cultural differences and even family differences. I would ask people when they say a word, what does that mean? Because families will have words they use that are shortcuts for each other, or words that are made up, or words that are very geographically local to an area. So just clarify that. But you can see when she asks him what it means that it's not a special word unique to him and his family. It's a neologism. So let's go ahead and
very quickly. So neologism, so the definition says a newly created word whose meaning is unknown to others. Does that include like unknown to themselves as well, or just
yeah, it's typically the person may have a definition for it, but this gentleman is not going to have a definition for it either. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's 43 years old, but to me he looks like he's in his 60s. But he's been in and out of the hospital for many years.
How are they treating you here?
Well, I mean, can I be specific about certain items?
Sure.
Overall, the main items, the chow is great. Withstanding a trend of something right. It might be a feeling that 2 meals in a row may not go down the same thinking pattern. The breakfast is phenomenal. Don't make sense about breakfast all the time, but overall, before that, you should have said overall before that, maybe. The picture, I think about certain things. We're talking about menus, meals and stuff, snacks, nutrition, going out places. They're down to 1.5 wink. 1.5 wink down there. None of this.
Okay, so he just looked down to the left and said none of this. And I haven't found any research on that, but I tell you, I've seen so many people with schizophrenia who have hallucinations that when they're talking to one of their hallucinations, they'll do that. They'll turn their head to the side and say something, and they're talking to somebody who's not there. So I'm going to back this up a couple of seconds just so you can see that.
Use meals and stuff, snacks, nutrition, going out places. They're down to 1.5 wink. 1.5 wink down there. None of this. And the tributaries down there. You might go 60%, 40, 20. Then overall, there are certain things. It might be about leaning for a while towards right on 70% categorically that way.
I kind of lost you there.
I knew that.
Can you say something specifically about the types of problems you've had?
Yes, I can give you more incident. I was living at, let's go back further than that. Not that what we're in with now. I was living, my memory's been detoned because it's been detoned. Detoned, not set forth or whatever. I don't know if that makes sense a little bit.
Well, I'm not familiar with that term, detoned.
Well, okay. After a certain time goes by, I go back to the same old thing. Life ain't as pretty as it was, ain't fair to people and that sort of thing. You see, I've changed the subject. Huh. Maybe I didn't. But I was in the VA in Knoxville. I've been in the VA out of state, Iowa. I've been in the VA in 2 places and 3 places in Marshalltown, question mark, exclamation point, conditionary. That is to say, it or something. For example, usually it fades into my head, in and out. Well, they took 3 of them from me in the state. I was there for a period of time, in and out of time, segments of time. They took 3 of them from me.
They took 3 what?
Norelco head cap replacement type of hygiene scissors.
Let me ask you some specific questions.
Yeah, oh, okay. I took the show from you.
That's okay, it's your show.
Yeah.
Do you have any special talents or powers that distinguish you from most people?
Well, as you get in between realm and depiction there, that's too much of a question for me. That's a stressful question. It's just like, if I could implicate, if I could talk to you, I will some more. And just like in today's world of opinion and denunciation and admirable like in pictures and friendliness and outward inliness, maybe, I'm on that thrust of it. It's just like, I better not go in that direction.
Okay, I'm going to stop it. So what's your response to this video clip?
I think he might be experiencing some like internal stimuli. That's why I'm assuming too. That's probably why he looked down and said no thanks, or what did he say? I think he said no.
Or not now, yeah.
Yeah, or not now, because I had clients like that before, and they used to do that a lot, and I was like, who are you talking to? And then they'd be like, oh, no one.
Right.
And so I experienced a lot of that before with other clients that I had that had schizophrenia. They did that a lot, so that's what I'm assuming. Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing right now because we're getting close to, oh wow, we are a little bit over time. So what I recommend you do is read through the full vocabulary sheet, check your answers with the answer key as well, and then sit and watch the video again and see how many of the vocabulary you can spot with the consumers here. I think there's one more person on this video. There might be a woman on this video as well towards the end. So that's all I have for today. It's interesting to work with people with these severe psychotic disorders. It's very tragic because it runs a gamut of people who just cannot function anymore to people who can function okay with medication. If you work in public mental health, you tend to only see the moderate to severe folks. So it's very challenging to help them maintain housing and any sort of income and making sure they have food and clothing, etc. But on the other hand, it's a good place to work because you are working with folks that most people will walk away from and get on the other side of the street from. So if you find yourself working with folks in this population, it can be very satisfying work. So I'm also going to